All right, Abigail, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
All right, thank you. So, hello, my name is Ashley Belle, and I am an environmental and energy stewardship educator for Extension. My office is located in Taylorville, in the Christian County Extension Office. So I am a part of the Illinois Extension Smart Grid Outreach Team. And our team, we are actually funded by the Illinois Science and Energy Innovation Foundation. So we've received grant funding to develop and deliver consumer education as it pertains to the electric smart grid, smart meter technology, as well as home energy efficiency. So we're currently in the 4th year conducting these educational programs. So if you have a group or an organization who may be interested in receiving free educational programming pertaining to the smart grid or home energy efficiency, please feel free to reach out to our smart grid outreach team. And we can even provide you with programming now virtually, as well as in person once face-to-face programming begins again. And so we'll have the link posted in the chat box to our Smart Grid Outreach contact information. And we also have Youth Smart Grid and Energy Efficiency programming available as well. Now, presenting the webinar with me today is Erin Garrett, and I will let Erin introduce herself to you now.
Thank you, Ashley. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Garrett, and I am also an energy and environmental stewardship educator. I am based in the southernmost 5 counties in Illinois, and I'll be jumping back in a little bit later to talk about some specific energy efficiency practices. But before we get to that, I'll turn it back over to Ashley, and we can go ahead and get started.
All right, so let's get started. So when we start off these programs, we always like to learn about our audience by learning about who is your electricity provider. So I have a poll that I'm going to pop on the screen. And if you could tell me, who is your electricity provider? Is it Ameren, ComEd, a local electric co-op, or a municipality? Now, if you happen to be with a local co-op or a municipality, can you please just indicate that name for us, specify that for us in the chat box? I'll allow a few more seconds to see if we can get a few more responses. Okay, great. All right, so it looks like the majority of us are either have our electricity provided by Ameren or with ComEd. So today, a little later, we will discuss some cost savings programs that are available for Ameren and ComEd customers. Okay, so our next question that we have for you. Do you closely monitor how much electricity your household uses monthly? Do you monitor that closely? All right, so we have about 43% that monitor their electricity consumption closely, whereas 57% don't really monitor it as closely. So I want you to think about this. So when your electricity bill comes in the mail, or say it may even come electronically, are you actually opening up that bill to find out information about your electricity consumption? Or do you say just quickly glance at how much you owe and throw it to the side? Now, I must admit that I've been guilty myself a time or two of just looking at how much I owe and throwing it to the side. So if you aren't in the habit of actually reading that electric bill, I really want to encourage you to actually open it up and actually start to gain a better understanding of just how much electricity your household is consuming. So we have pictured here, these are examples of 2 different electricity bills. from different Illinois electricity companies. So when you first open up your bill, I want you to look at how much electricity your household has consumed that month. So typically, electricity usage is reported in kilowatt hours. And so this is here, it's abbreviated kWh. So if we take a closer look here at this particular electricity bill, we can see that this bill was generated in March. So in this particular March bill, when the meter was read in March, it read 13,997 kilowatt hours. And then in the previous month, when they read the meter, it read 13,733 kilowatt hours. So when they took the difference between the previous meter reading and the current meter reading, we can see that this home used 264 kilowatt hours of electricity that month. Now, the feature that I like to examine the most on my electricity bill are actually looking at the graphics. So these graphics here, they are very useful because they can help us to see how our electricity usage varies as the seasons change, as well as the temperatures change. And additionally, these graphics can also allow you to compare your current usage now in comparison to that same time period a year ago. So let's say you're examining these figures, and if you notice that your electricity usage now is significantly different, say it's an increase now in comparison to this same time period last year, it should kind of make you stop and think, okay, what am I doing in my home right now that's causing my electricity usage to become so elevated? And to start thinking about those factors such as, is the average monthly temperature comparable to this same time as last year? Or have my housing and lifestyle choices changed any? So really starting to examine those habits so that you can start to get back to your normal baseline. Now, I also want to point out to you that you can see in this top bill, this home used 264 kilowatt hours of electricity, while as this home at the bottom used 2,666 kilowatt hours of electricity. Now, these bills are from a similar time period between the months of February and March in central Illinois, but the usage is drastically different between these homes. So there are several factors that can come into play as to why electricity usage is drastically different between these two homes. So if we think about lifestyle styles, and if we think about, say, daily habits of homes, they can be completely different from one home to another. So let's say, for example, some people, they're home all day, while as others, they may be away for a significant amount of time working. So some other factors that we can possibly take into consideration as to why electricity usage may vary between households is that the number of people who reside there may differ, the size of the home, the age of the home, and one home might also be all electric with, say, no gas appliances, or even the home may just be constructed or it may be designed to maximize heating and cooling needs. So the take-home message here that we really want to stress is that energy consumption will vary from household to household. So if you want to make comparisons, it is best to use your own energy data and to compare your energy consumptions to previous time periods. Okay, so I have another question for you now. We've discussed that electricity is measured in kilowatt hours. So in the United States, how much electricity do you think the average US home consumes monthly? So according to the US Energy Information Administration, on average, monthly electricity consumption for a US home is between 900 and 1,000 kilowatt hours. Okay, so this brings us to our interactive game. So this game is called Guess That Wattage. So I'm going to show you several common household electronic appliances and electronic devices, and I would like for you to guess how much electricity does each of these consume. So we're first going to start off with a 50-gallon water heater. And let's assume that this water heater is for an average family of 4. So how much electricity does the water heater consume? Does it consume 175, 300, or 400 kilowatt hours per month? So our water heater uses 400 kilowatt hours per month. Okay, so let's move on to our laundry room. So here we have a standard washing machine, and it has temperature settings on it. So with our washing machine, how much electricity does this use? So we have a setting for cold water wash as well as a setting for hot water wash. So on cold water wash, it uses a 0.5 kilowatt hours per load. And with the hot water wash, on the hot water setting, it uses 3.4 kilowatt hours per load. So you can see here in this example that the hot water wash uses over 6 times the amount of electricity as compared to the cold water wash. So you can see that a significant amount of energy just went into heating that water. So if you want to have energy savings, consider strongly using cold water washes as much as possible, because many of our laundry detergents now have been formulated to achieve an optimal wash even when we're using the cold water setting. Okay, so now it's time to dry our clothes in the electric clothes dryer. So how much electricity does an electric clothes dryer consume? Our electric clothes dryer uses 5 kilowatt hours of electricity. Okay, so moving along, we have a central air conditioning unit. So let's assume for this particular example that it is a 24,000 BTU central air conditioning unit, and let's assume that it's going to run for 7 hours a day. So how much electricity does the air conditioner use? 500, 700, or 900 kilowatt hours per month? It uses 700 kilowatt hours per month. Okay, so now we are going to head into the kitchen. And here we have a frost-free refrigerator, and it was manufactured in 2002 or later. So let's assume that it's about 17 cubic feet. So how much electricity does our refrigerator consume? So our refrigerator consumes 82 kilowatt hours per month. Now remember I pointed out to you that this was a newer model refrigerator. So if you have an older model refrigerator, it may be actually using twice as much electricity. So that's why you have utility companies such as Ameren that have a program where they will actually pick up and haul away your old full-size working refrigerator, and they will take it to be recycled, and then they will provide you with a $50 check that you can put towards purchasing a more energy efficient unit. And this upgrade alone could potentially save you about $100 or more in your yearly electricity costs. All right, so we're still in the kitchen. So let's decide that we want to bake a cake. So we're going to put this cake in our electric oven for an hour. So how much electricity does our oven use? So our oven uses 3.2 kilowatt hours per hour. And our last electronic device is a standard 21-inch color TV. How much electricity does our television consume? It consumes 0.3 kilowatt hours per hour. Okay, so from review of our game, we just learned about the electricity consumption of several common household appliances as well as some electronic devices. So what do you think? What are the biggest electricity consumers in a U.S. home? So I would like for you in this next question to select what do you think are the top 3 biggest consumers of electricity in a U.S. home? We have computers, space heating, cooking, refrigeration, lighting, space cooling, water heating, dishwashers. So please select the top 3 biggest consumers in a U.S. home. So we have data here that has been obtained from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and this is showing us the latest data that's available from 2019 of how electricity was consumed in a U.S. home. And so you can see that from this data that the top 4 consumers of electricity in the U.S. home come from cooling and heating our homes, followed by water heating and refrigeration. Now this 31% that's shown here is other uses. So this combines things together like small electronic devices and exterior lighting. So we can actually see from this data that since we have numerous small electronic devices in our home, that electricity consumption can actually quickly add up in our home. Now I want to point out to you that improving the energy efficiency of your home, it does not always have to be a costly project. Just by you making some simple lifestyle changes and using some inexpensive or no cost strategies, you can really start to make your home become more energy efficient. So I'm going to pass this over to Erin now and let her talk about some ways in which we can reduce our energy usage in our home.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Let me see if I can get the slide. Perfect. All right, so now that we have a better picture of how our electricity is being used in our homes, we're going to take a look at how we can reduce that energy usage. And we're going to focus on these 6 main topics here, and we're going to go through each one of them individually. So to start, we'll begin with heating and cooling, because we just learned that about 30% of the average homeowner's electric bill goes towards heating and cooling costs. So it is that top energy consumer when combined in your household. So one thing you can do to reduce this usage is to consider adjusting the thermostat when you are away from home or when you are asleep. So if you do this and adjust your temperature between 7 and 10 degrees away from your baseline temperature for, say, about 8 hours a day, you can result in some savings. And so engaging in this practice can result in savings of up to 10% per year on just that heating and cooling portion of your bill. So some recommended baseline temperatures in the wintertime are 68 to 70 degrees as a baseline. And in the summertime, let me see if I can get my slide back here. There we go. Sorry about that. In the summertime, recommended settings are 76 to 78 degrees. Now, I don't know about you, but that recommended summer temperature for when you're at home sounds very warm. So again, it's based on your baseline. So some things to consider is figuring out what temperature is comfortable for you, and then what can you do to adjust that temperature throughout the day when you're not home. Okay, so I know typically in a normal schedule, my family's away from the home, you know, say from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening. So in the summertime, we can raise our baseline temperature from 72, that's what we're comfortable with, up to say 80 degrees. And then when we get home, we can have that temperature cool down to the temperature that we prefer. So one easy way to do this is to take advantage of a programmable thermostat, because if you do have a predictable schedule, you can program in the temperature settings that you prefer and what times of the day you want them to change. And then your thermostat will take care of that by itself. Now, one thing to note is a lot of times people wonder if your system has to work harder and thereby use more energy to either cool down or warm up your home, those big temperature shifts. And studies have shown that it doesn't take more electricity unless your home has a heat pump. And I've learned this from experience living in an apartment with a heat pump, and I still wanted to try and see if I could adjust that temperature during the day, and my electricity costs were very, very high. So just keep that in mind. Heat pumps work most efficiently if you keep that temperature stable. So just something to consider trying out for a month or two, comparing it to that month in the previous year's electricity usage, and see if it makes a difference in your home. All right, some other heating and cooling tips is to utilize your ceiling fans. So if you don't know, your ceiling fans have directional settings for the season. So in the summertime, it is good practice to have that ceiling fan rotating counterclockwise. And that means that the air, the cool air, is going to be pushed down and create a wind chill effect. And then in the winter, you can flip that switch to have your fan rotate clockwise, which is going to help recirculate heat from the ceiling to the living area below. So I know I just switched the direction on my ceiling fans now that we've entered into summertime. And just remember that fans cool people, not rooms. So if you're not in a room, it's not actually changing the temperature of that room. So make sure you turn that fan off when you leave that room. Okay, there are a few other really simple tips to keep in mind. In the summertime, make sure that you keep those blinds and curtains closed in the heat of the afternoon to try to keep some of that heat from entering your home. And in the wintertime, consider opening those blinds and curtains, especially on south-facing windows in the afternoon, to help allow some heat to get into your home. Making sure that we're cleaning and replacing our filters on a monthly or recommended by your manufacturer timescale. Usually at least every 6 months is recommended for changing those filters. And then one last practice to consider is setting your thermostat fan to automatic rather than on. And this means that your system will run only when needed, not on a standard cycle over a given period of time, but only when it's needed. Okay, so your water heater is the second largest energy consumer in your household. And it's important to note that the manufacturer setting for temperature is 140 degrees, but you can reduce the temperature down to 120 degrees if you have a relatively low demand for hot water. So as long as it's above 120 degrees, that's the temperature consistent with maintaining safe drinking water, so you don't want to go below 120. But that's one thing to consider. If you do have a relatively low demand for hot water, you can consider lowering that temperature. Depending on your home and the location of your water heater, you may want to consider insulating your water tank and pipes. And then in addition to these practices, as Ashley talked about earlier, using less water and less hot water will reduce your electricity usage by reducing the amount of water heating that needs to occur. So consider washing clothes in a cooler water temperature, repairing leaky faucets, installing low flow faucets and shower heads, and taking shorter showers. And then additionally, if you do need to replace a toilet in your home, you can consider purchasing a low flow toilet. Okay, another energy efficiency practice that can also improve the aesthetics of your property is to consider planting deciduous trees on the south side of your home. So this is because direct sun on your home can add excessive heat to the inside in the summertime, which makes your air conditioner run more often. So unfortunately, this is not a quick and easy fix. We can't plant trees and expect to reap that benefit right away. But over the course of, say, a decade, you may start to see some results. And it's also important to consider if you're planning on removing some trees from your property that are on the south side of your home, just think about the effect that that may have on your energy savings, and just consider that in your planning process as well. Okay, this next slide has a lot of information on it, but I will point you to the parts that we're going to focus on here. So energy efficient lighting options have changed drastically over the last few decades, as has the cost and the measurements that we use to choose a light bulb as well. So hopefully many of us are familiar with incandescent light bulbs and how they lost about 90% of their energy as heat, which made them extremely inefficient. So now we have different types of light bulbs that we use with much lower wattages, and therefore they don't lose a huge amount of energy through heat. So if you look in the bottom left hand, you can see a chart that compares watts and lumens. So we're used to choosing a light bulb based on wattage, but because our light bulbs are more efficient, they're using much fewer watts. So we're switching to using a brightness measurement, which is called lumens, to choose the proper light bulb for the right fixture. So for instance, a 60-watt bulb is about 800 lumens in brightness. So this definitely changes the way we're used to picking out a bulb in the store, but luckily many labels still include the old wattage as a reference. So you may go to the store and pick up a box and it says, this is a 13-watt bulb, but it's a 60-watt equivalent. So they're still helping us get used to this different way of picking out a light bulb. And you can also see on the right side of this graphic, the lighting facts sheet, which just has more information on that lumens, that brightness. And another thing that it includes is a light appearance. So I know when LED lights first came out, a lot of people were skeptical of them because they seemed very, very cool in color and very bright. I know my family purchased LED Christmas lights, and our tree was so bright you could see it all the way down the street. But now there's a lot more color and mood choices, so you can get a warmer bulb or a cooler bulb. And so this has resulted in a lot more choices, which can seem a little bit overwhelming. But there's a lot of information on the boxes, so if you just read them when you're in the aisle, it can really help you pick the right bulb. But let's look a little closer at a comparison of the different light bulbs. So we used to have traditional incandescents. Those are no longer being sold. To replace that, we have three options. We have halogen incandescents, compact fluorescent lamps, which are known as CFLs, and then light emitting diodes, which are known as LED bulbs. In that top line there, you can see that CFLs and LEDs use between 1/4 and 1/5 of the amount of energy that a traditional incandescent bulb used. This leads to a much greater efficiency in the way that these bulbs are using electricity and greatly reduces our overall annual energy cost. My favorite part of this chart is to look at the lifetime in hours of each of these bulbs. So whereas a traditional incandescent would last on average for 1,000 hours, you can see that LED bulb can last all the way up to 25,000 hours. Now it's important to note that in order to get the most lifetime out of a bulb, you need to be properly matching the bulb to your lighting fixture. So when a CFLs came out, a lot of people didn't know that at that time you couldn't put a CFL bulb in a dimmer switch fixture. So a lot of these bulbs were dying much faster than 10,000 hours because they weren't being properly matched to the fixture, excuse me. I know I've purchased LEDs that work on dimmer switches and three-way lights, so there are a lot of options, but just make sure, again, that you're properly matching the light bulb with the fixture that you're using it in to maximize the lifetime. Okay, so another way to increase your energy efficiency is to make sure that your home is properly weatherized. And many ways to do this are low cost. So checking for cracks around windows, sealing them with caulk, weather stripping your doors and windows if applicable. I know we just installed some window air conditioners in our home and made sure that we had foam to fill in those cracks around our window air conditioners. So those are some easy things, easy checks that you can do around your home to make sure it's properly sealed. And then finally, one place homeowners tend not to look to reduce their energy usage is at all those small electric devices we have plugged in around our home that we then forget are plugged in. So vampire power or phantom energy is energy used by electronics when they're plugged in but not in use. So essentially anything in your home with a light or a clock on it that's still on, even when that appliance isn't being used, they're drawing energy if they're plugged in. So think about a microwave, a stove, a coffee maker, those all usually have clocks. Your TV a lot of the times has a red light when it's off, so it's still drawing just a small amount of electricity. But vampire loads can add up to a huge waste of electricity. In the US, it costs consumers billions of dollars per year and many billions of kilowatt hours. So the amount of vampire load in your household is likely minimal, but if you are noticing that you do still have this consistent high electric bill, consider going around your home and starting to unplug some of these small electric devices. A few other things you can unplug are battery chargers and power adapters, and then you can consider using a power strip for your electronics and then flipping the switch off when you're not using them. Smart power strips are really cool. I encourage you to look into them. They make it really easy for you to just have to power down one part of a setup. So say my computer home office setup has a laptop and a monitor and speakers and a lamp. And when I turn my computer off, it turns everything else off along with it. So something to look into if you're considering using power strips. All right, Ashley, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'm going to take back control from you. All right, there we go. All right, so it seems just about that everything is becoming smarter these days. So we have things like smartphones, we have smart homes, smart plugs, smart thermostats, we even have smart vacuum cleaners. And even our old electrical grid, which is over 100 years old, it is being updated and modernized as well, and it is being referred to as the smart grid. So as a part of the smart grid update, smart meters are being installed at our homes, as well as at substations and at transformers to give us a better picture of how much energy is being demanded in a particular area. So if we look here at this picture on the left, this is an analog model electric meter, and it has those mechanical spinning dials. So these are the older electric meters. And if we look here over to the right, This is the newer digital meter known as the smart meter. So we kind of like to gauge our audience to see how many of you have had smart meters installed at your home. Have you noticed if your home has a smart meter? If you can let us know. So the majority of you have noticed that you have a smart meter installed at your home now. But if you're not sure, that's okay. I would like to encourage you to look today or tomorrow to see if your electric meter is a smart meter. Because by having this particular meter, you can take advantage of some cost-saving programs. So let's talk about smart meters here. So we have our smart meter down here. And so this smart meter actually allows for two-way wireless communication. So what I mean by this is that this smart meter is able to send information to the electric company, and the electric company is able to send information to the smart meter. Now, with our older analog meters, the electric company, they would actually have to send someone out to our home to actually read our meter each month in order to determine our bill. And if the reader wasn't available to come out to our home that particular month, they just estimated how much electricity they thought we had consumed. And I'm quite sure that many of us thought that the estimation was probably rather high and it was kind of off from what we thought we had actually consumed. But since this smart meter is able to directly communicate with the electric company and inform them of exactly how much electricity we are consuming in our home, we in turn get a more accurate bill. Now with these particular smart meters, they can also communicate with the electricity company and they can inform them if there has been a power outage. Now let's think back when we had those older analog electric meters. And when there was a power outage, we had to actually find the number to the power company and inform them that we were in the dark. But with the new smart meter, with the smart grid update, the electric company automatically knows when there has been a power outage. Now, the feature that I actually like the most about smart meters is that it allows you the capability to use an online account that's provided by your utility company, and you can see a breakdown day by day, hour by hour, just how much electricity your home has consumed. Now, if you think back to the older analog meters, we were just provided on our bill with, say, just one total. It was just the sum of how much electricity we had consumed that month. But with the smart meter, if we sign on to our online account, we are provided with a lot more information. So by knowing how much energy that we are using day by day, hour by hour, this allows us to be able to take greater control over our electricity bill. So let's say today I say sign on to my account. And I noticed from yesterday that between the hours of 3 and 5 p.m., my electricity usage is much higher. So it really should make me stop and think, okay, what am I doing in my home between 3 and 5 p.m.? And what lifestyle changes can I make now to start decreasing my energy usage so that at the end of the month, my bill is more manageable for me? So again, this smart meter allows us to have greater control over our electricity bill. Now, an additional advantage that we have by having a smart meter, if you are an Ameren or a ComEd residential customer, you can sign up for some programs, and these programs can potentially help you to save money on your electric bill. Now, there are actually two different types of cost-saving programs that we want to highlight today. And one of those is a peak time energy reduction program, and the other is an hourly pricing program. Now, each utility company has a unique name for their specific program, but they operate in similar manner. So we're actually going to discuss some of those in a few minutes. But before we do that, we would like to know if you are an Ameren or ComEd customer, are you currently enrolled in any of their cost-saving programs that we have listed here? Okay, thank you so much for providing us with that information. So let's talk about the peak time energy reduction programs first. So the whole overall goal of this program is that we want to reduce your electricity usage below your baseline during periods when there is a high demand for electricity. Now, for each kilowatt hour of electricity that you save, you will be rewarded with a bill credit. Now, I would encourage anyone to sign up for these programs because there is no enrollment fee and there are no penalties involved. So remember that between Ameren and ComEd, these programs operate in a similar manner, but there are just a few differences. For example, with Ameren, their Peak Time Rewards program. It is a year-long program and it restarts each year on June 1st. Whereas with ComEd, their Peak Time Savings program is available June 1st through October 31st. And the amount of the bill credit that you are rewarded also varies between companies. Now with Ameren, the amount of the bill credit, it is predetermined and it can differ from year to year and it's based on market prices, but it has ranged in the past anywhere from 10 cents to $2 per kilowatt hour. Now with ComEd, you actually will earn $1 for each kilowatt hour of electricity that you save. Now, with either of these particular programs, in order to be notified, you can actually set up if you want to be notified by phone, by text, or by email. And when it's prior to this peak time or peak time saving event occurring, they will send you a notification letting you know it's time to reduce your baseline. But remember, there is no penalties involved if you choose to not reduce your electricity usage beneath your baseline that particular event. Now, most of the time, these events are going to occur on weekdays, and they're going to occur typically in the afternoons when the weather is hot or humid. So remember, the whole goal of this program is that we are reducing our electricity usage below your baseline during the event. So let's kind of look at an example of how Ameren determines your baseline. So let's say that the peak time rewards event is going to occur on July 17th. So Ameren will look at your electricity usage 14 days prior to the peak time reward event. So if it was a holiday or a previous peak time reward event, they're not going to include that in the calculation. So they have your 14 days of electricity usage here. And from those 14 days, they're going to pick the days that you use the highest amount of electricity during that same time frame of the peak time reward event. So you can see here we have 10, 9, and 11 kilowatt hours. But in this particular day, the weather was too hot and too humid, so they're not going to include this 9 kilowatt hours in our calculation to determine our baseline. So you can see that they're going to average the 10 kilowatt hours and 11 kilowatt hours to make our baseline 10.5 kilowatt hours. So that means that during the peak time rewards event, if we reduce our electricity usage say in this particular example, we reduced our usage and we only use 8.5 kilowatt hours. That means that we reduced our usage by 2 kilowatt hours. So if the bill credit was $1 per kilowatt hours, that means that we would be credited $2 on our electricity bill. Now, the ComEd Peak Time Saving Program works in a similar fashion. But with the ComEd program, they actually use a formula to determine your baseline based on your typical consumption of electricity, based on your typical electricity consumption history. And remember that for every kilowatt hour of electricity that you save during the peak time saving hours, you will be credited with $1. And customers have earned anywhere from, say, $1 to $12 per event by making small adjustments such as avoiding using large appliances or raising their thermostat during saving hours. So I will let Erin talk about the other program, the hourly pricing program.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Let me see if I can get the screen to move. There we go. Okay, so like Ashley said, the second program is hourly pricing. And in these programs, consumers pay market rates for electricity. And these programs encourage small changes in your energy usage behavior to shift your usage from high demand, high price times to low demand and low price times. And these programs are made possible now with your smart meter, which is able to measure your hourly electricity usage. So for most energy consumers, you pay a standard fixed price for your electricity, even though the cost of generating that electricity varies based on the time of the day that it's being generated, the demand for that energy, and the season. Now, you may pay a different summer price versus other seasons, but those seasonal prices are still fixed rates that you pay. So in these hourly pricing programs, you don't pay a fixed rate, but the market rate. So if you're an Ameren customer, the program's Power Smart pricing, and the hourly market-based prices are set the night before. In contrast, ComEd's hourly pricing program bills you for the actual real-time hourly price, but they provide an estimate of prices the day before. So one is a day-ahead pricing program, and the other is an actual real-time pricing program. Both of them, you have to have a smart meter. For Ameren, there is a small monthly participation fee, which adds up to $27 a year, whereas with ComEd, there is no extra fee. Now, both programs don't have a time commitment required, but if you do decide to leave the program and then want to rejoin it, you do have to wait 1 year to do so. So let's really quickly look at how this works in a little more detail. So we have one chart from Ameren on the left and one from ComEd, but they show the same general trends. So you'll see, except for hot summer afternoons, the average market-based price of electricity is typically lower than the standard fixed price, which we can see in that gray bar in the left-hand chart. So the key is reducing your energy during peak times. So you want to use less electricity during the daytime hours in the summer and then the morning and evening hours during the other seasons. So some easy ways to do this are altering that thermostat if you're away running errands or at work, and taking advantage of timers on major appliances to delay their start until you go to sleep. So this is where taking advantage of the energy efficiency practices we discussed earlier in conjunction to signing up for hourly pricing can really start to impact and reduce your energy bills, which has been made possible by the smart grid. And of course, it's important to remember you're still going to be using some electricity during those high demand times, but these programs make you stop and think about when you're using those higher demand electrical devices like your washer, your dryer, your chargers, and so on. Let's look really quickly at a screenshot from ComEd's website. This shows just the comparison of the day ahead estimation of prices in the blue line versus the actual real-time prices in the red. So you can see their estimation is pretty close. The scale on the left-hand side is in 1/2 cent increments. So their estimations get pretty close for those day ahead calculations. And then finally, I just want to show you a screenshot from the PowerSmart pricing website. So both of these programs are administered through a third party called Elevate Energy. So when you sign up, you get access to an account that has all of your information on your past month's usage and savings, and all of that information is compiled and accessible to you. So here is a page from my account showing my household savings on PowerSmart pricing. So you can see on some months it's possible to save up to 30% of your electric bill. So I see numbers on here from saving, $1.60 to saving up to $26 a month. But you'll notice there are also some months in the red. So I'm not gonna try to make it sound like we save money every month. Sometimes it's winter months and we're cold and we want the heat on. So in those months, you can see we paid, $3 to $6 more because we were paying those market rates rather than that standard fixed price. But overall, we've been in the program for 4.5 years, and in total, we've saved $550, which is 17.7% of our electricity usage. Now, because we're on the Ameren program, remember we did have that $27 a year fee. That's already subtracted out of that. So we would have saved, let's say $670, but because we had that fee, what we actually saved was $550. So that fee still doesn't act as a barrier for us to be in this program. All right, so we do want to thank the Illinois Science and Energy Innovation Foundation, who provided an educational grant for the development and delivery of these and related programs. And at this time, we have the QR code and the link to our evaluation up on the screen. And as Abigail said at the beginning of the talk, we very much appreciate your feedback. And then we ask you to consider joining us next week for the final weekly Everyday Environment webinar all about clouds with Dwayne Friend. And then our team will be taking July off from webinar delivery, but then we'll be returning in August for a continuation of the Everyday Environment webinar series, which will be transitioning from a weekly to just once a month, format. All right, so we do have some time left, Abigail. So we welcome any questions that have come in the chat box.
Yeah, I will start firing off the ones that have already been said. There was a question about if the PowerPoint will be shared. It will not, but the YouTube video of this webinar, like the recorded version of this webinar, will be posted on our YouTube series page. And so I'm actually going to put that YouTube link in the chat, so that way check back in a few weeks and it should be posted there. We just have to wait for it to get closed captioned. A quick question about power strips. Does shutting off the power strip, is that like unplugging it, as in it's using no electricity at all, or is there something else going on?
So with the standard power strip, in order to stop the flow of power going to those devices, you would actually have to flip the switch. But with the smart power strip actually, you do not have to flip the switch on the smart power strip, because it automatically senses when that device is no longer in use, and it then stops the flow of power going to that particular device.
Okay. And what is the correct way to dispose of different light bulbs when they burn out?
That's a great question. It kind of depends on your location, but some recycling centers may accept certain types of light bulbs, or I know in some towns they have a recycling day where they collect paint and batteries and kind of those other things that you don't really know what to do with, and sometimes light bulbs are included in that. So Ashley, I don't know if you have any more information. I don't have just a standard answer, but those are some things to look for in your local area.
Okay, and then one individual asked specifically, they switched to Arcadia as their Ameren biller. Is that similar to Elevate? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with that particular, what did you say is Acadian? But I'm going to assume that it is an alternative energy supplier, but I'm not familiar with that company off the top of my head. But I would assume that they're different than Elevate Energy. Elevate Energy is not an alternative energy supplier.
Okay. And it looks like, as an answer to the disposal question, some people posted that Lowe's and Menards and similar stores might take back certain light bulbs. So check definitely locally what's going on with your recycling centers and your local stores. If there's any other questions, it is 2 o'clock. And so I will, just as a last minute, post those resources on the peak time rewards and the hourly pricing programs back in the chat just really quick in case you missed them. But other than that, please fill out the evaluation, and we hope to see you next week for All About Clouds. Erin and Ashley, do you have any last minute things you want to say?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Sorry, Ashley.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great afternoon, everybody.